Just about, I'm just put this on YouTube right now.
6 seconds.
I'm ready when
Yeah,
you
we
all
definitely
are.
record. So we'll wait, we'll give it to 101 or something. Donna's on here?
Yes, Donna's on there. We've tested her stuff. She's good to go.
Great.
No, there you go. There's Donna.
That's fine. I played it too.
KYTC.
Let's go get started. We'll call the roll.
Yeah, KYTC just joined too, so.
Already here.
They're already here.
On the flesh.
Well,
Central.
they know it's Central.
The cathedral might still be in.
Yeah, Isidro's still on vacation. Thomas couldn't come, so I'm here.
Oh, we got Steve today. Good. Hey, no, Steve. You ready? Yes.
All right. Jim Silliman, Oldham County, standing in for Ada Kopish today. She had a previous engagement. So I'll call our Transportation Technical Coordinating Committee meeting for KIPTA to order at 1:01 p.m. It's Wednesday, April 9th. Can I have a roll call?
Yes, sir. I know we're gonna have a few missing on account of weather today. Let's start with Bullitt County. City of Charlestown. Here. Okay. City of J-Town. City of Jeffersonville. Mount Washington. New Albany. Shepherdsville. St. Matthews. Keenan.
Sir.
Hey, Keenan. Clark County. Floyd County.
Nick Creevy.
Nick. NDOT Public Transportation. Here. Let's see, NDOT Urban and Long Range Planning, I believe so. NDOT Seymour.
Haley's here.
Hi, Haley. Kentucky DAQ. KYTC Central Office.
Here.
I talked to Steve. KYTC District 5.
I'm Tom Hall.
Hi, Tom. Get this here. KYTC Office of Transportation Delivery. Tracy Levels here. Hi, Tracy. Metro APCD. Metro Economic Development.
Mike King here.
Hi, Mike. Metro Planning and Design.
Brian Davis here.
Hey, Brian. Metro Public Works. Louisville Regional Airport Authority.
Darrell Watson here.
Hi, Daryl. Thank you for joining us. Daryl Watson is the new KIPTA rep representing Louisville Regional Airport Authority. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Louisville Riverport Authority. Let's go back to Louisville Metro Public Works. We just missed you, Mark. See you, Mark. Thank you for joining us. Oldham County.
Here's Jim Silliman.
Oldham County Planning.
Anna Barr.
Port of Indiana Jeffersonville. Town of Clarksville.
Mike Huff's here.
Hey, Mike. And Tark is probably not gonna be here. Aida could not be here today. She's at a training out of town, if I'm not mistaken. Who did?
Arthur.
Hello, Arthur. Arthur from City Engineer of City of Shepherdsville. Thank you for joining us today. We have a few advisory members. I think we do. I see Bruce Bone from from Trimark. We also have a special guest in attendance today, Miss Ashley Becker. Ashley is my counterpart at the Columbus, Indiana MPO. So she's here at KIPTA today to kind of see how we administer our processes. And she said she wants to see how we do the meeting too. So let's put on a good show for her today. And thank you all for being here today. We most definitely have a forum. And we'll go back to you.
Hey, Andy. Hey, before we get started, can I make a comment? Brandon Cole is stepping in today for Julie Feltner. He is marked as an attendees on here. He is not able to use his mic or anything. I'm not sure what that is, but he just wanted to make sure he was noted that he's here.
I just phoned.
Okay, he's been promoted into the main room here
Thank you.
soon. And we see Brian Eaton also of KYTC District 5. So Brian, thank you for joining us as well. Good crowd.
I was going to add, appreciate everyone, and I'm sure I speak for you also. We appreciate everyone's attendance. Everyone's probably inundated with some flood response efforts. So being here, we appreciate it. Second, item on the agenda, everyone should have received the March, TTCC meeting minutes. You have any questions or? If not, we take a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry, we'll pause. I forgot that was my job to do that.
That is your job. Yeah, we got you. We'll make sure you do it. We got you.
Andy, the Transportation Policy Committee report.
Yes, sir. So we met on Thursday, March 27th. It was a lot of similar items as that we discussed at our last meeting, this committee back in earlier in March. Of note that, and maybe of difference, we had former KIPTA staff, Alex Pazorski, alongside TARC Executive Director Ozzie Gibson. They came in and talked about their ongoing efforts with the TARC 2025 route restructuring. And so Mr. Gibson was gave us a good summary of kind of the, let's call them the budget shortfalls and the changes that have definitely happened over the last 5 years due to ridership changes, COVID or otherwise. Cost increases in their operations certainly have increased over that same period of time. The COVID stimulus money is kind of petering out as we speak, and so it's a tough spot for them to be in. And so they're restructuring the routes, as many of you all know. I think there was some good news. They've got a modified, enhanced approach, or I think they're calling it. They're going to be able to provide some service, notably beyond what kind of the what they plan to constrict to, in particular to some of the. I believe they're prioritizing some of the high schools that were going to be left out in Jefferson County anyways, of the transit service and try to reach those places that might be slightly beyond where they were anticipating needing to constrict their service to. So it was good to have them here that day. We talked a little bit about the Indiana funding changes that we talked about at this meeting last month. We created a blanket resolution for our State Streets and Roads for All. So for any agencies, and I think there's a couple that haven't done your local agency SS4A resolution commitment to the Vision Zero principles, that is, there's now one for the KIPTA MPO region as a whole. So if there's some reason that you can't get that through a fiscal court or a city council or something like that, you can lean on ours, so to speak. Mick through the Regional Transportation Council has already done with one of those for the rural county, so everybody's in good shape for that. But I think it still would be better if you haven't done that to go ahead and get that handled. We had a couple other agenda items, but one of the ones I want to mention is we started the discussion on PPC membership, meaning maybe once a decade time to take a look at it and see who's a part of that our TPC. And if we need to make some changes, we're not making them right away. We're not going to do anything in haste. But there probably will be some maybe some changes to the TTCC, right? Arthur, for example, from Shepherdsville and his counterparts from Mount Washington about this time last decade were brought on to the TTCC, as a LPA that's on TTCC but not TPC, and that's kind of maybe like one step into the club, so to speak. Maybe we do something like that. Maybe we're going to take a look at some of these cities, these suburban cities, Mount Washington, Shepherdsville, probably at the very top of the list that probably. Or maybe warrant, a voting membership at the KIPTA table. There's more to it than that. How would it relate to TTCC, and also very importantly, how would it relate to the KIPTA board of directors and maybe the dues paying nature of the process here? So that's something we'll be talking about over the coming months. So I just want to make sure everybody knows about that. So if there's any other questions, be happy to answer them. But we'll go over some of the other stuff we talked about last month. There's going to be some of those same things are going to be discussed today through one way or the other.
Thank you. Greg, do we have any public comment?
We did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting. I'm not seeing any in the Q&A, but if any come up during the meeting, I'll bring them up in other business.
Next, I understand that we have Donna Harden with KYTC to give some insight on the environmental analysis of transportation projects.
Yeah, so many of you all know Donna Harden. Donna is a KYTC District 5 staff person. She's the environmental coordinator over there, and so we've asked Donna if she could give the TTCC a presentation on how KYTC handles the NEPA process, environmental processes, I guess more generally, And she's put together a presentation for us today that I think is important for us all to consider. And some of it's recap for many folks, I'm sure, but for other folks, I think it's gonna be very informative. So Donna, we'll get your presentation queued up.
Yeah, and she's got it.
She's got it. She's gonna share screen. Okay, so Donna, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. First, let me say I appreciate being asked to present. I greatly appreciate to be able to present virtually. I am visually impaired, so it allows me to get real close to my monitor and see what it is I want to talk about. So I am going to turn off my camera and save some bandwidth, and then I will get my presentation going. Okay, can y'all see it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. So as Andy said, my name is Donna Hardin, and I'm the environmental coordinator over at District 5. I've been in this role now almost 6 years. I do want to say that with environmental and NEPA, every project is different, so it is very interesting, and there's always something new that comes up. So what is NEPA and how does it affect you? NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act. It was developed in response to several events that demonstrated the environmental cost of American progress. The National Environmental Policy Act of 1969 was created to ensure that federal agencies consider the environmental impacts of their actions and decisions. So I also want to give credit to Joe Ferguson. He's the District 4 Environmental Coordinator. He had a presentation recently, and we kind of shared our presentations with each other. So I've stolen a few of his slides, and so I'm a very literal person. He's apparently got more humor. So Joe is the one that found this great manure crisis of 1894. So horses were used to get around at that time, and apparently they produce 15 to 30 pounds of manure a day. In the large cities, there's thousands of them. This picture is of New York City, and there was approximately 150,000 horses in New York City at this time, which produced over 3 million pounds of manure. So removing that manure was the greatest obstacle to urban development. 19th century planners thought that there was no solution until the car, the Model T. And as we know, with the car came a lot of other impacts and issues to deal with, roadways, pollution. So that leads into, there was a rising awareness of environmental issues. And in 1962, Rachel Carson wrote a book called Silent Spring, and it documented the harms of pesticides, especially DDT. And she argued that it harmed wildlife, it contaminated our food supply, which in turn posed a threat to human life. There was also the 1969 Santa Barbara oil spill. This was a blowout from a Union Oil platform. It killed thousands of seabirds, marine mammals like sea lions and dolphins, and it coated the beaches with foul-smelling oil. In 1969, I'm sure most of you have also heard of the Cuyahoga River Fire. This was on June the 22nd of 1969 in Cleveland, Ohio. The river caught fire just miles downstream of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. The fire was also dramatized the pollution in the river, and it showed that they were lacking on their abatement response. So because of events like these, the government came out with landmark environmental legislation. You can see we've got water pollution control, air, water quality, clean water, endangered species, but the one in red obviously is the one we're talking about, is the National Environmental Policy Act. So what is NEPA? NEPA is a procedural law, which means it gives us procedures to follow. It created the Council on Environmental Equity. It establishes a decision-making framework for federal agencies, and it's considered the Magna Carta of environmental laws. So NEPA and transportation, that's what we're here to talk about. We work on transportation projects. NEPA will actually start environmental review as early as possible. Now, this doesn't always mean NEPA. This can be the planning and environmental linkage studies. This is something that we I personally just recently been involved in a couple of Pell studies in the last couple of years. I know we're trying to get more involved with these. It is not NEPA, but it does help inform the environmental review process that follows during and design. So there's also the environmental overview. When we do planning studies, we always include an environmental overview. This is also included in some state-funded projects, or if it's a large federal project, we like to do an environmental overview because we can't spend the money to do a detailed analysis of the whole area. We need to wait until we kind of trim it down to fewer alternatives. So design and environmental review should progress simultaneously for a more efficient project. So the essential elements of NEPA is purpose and need, alternatives, impacts, mitigation, public involvement, interagency coordination, documentation. This is in a circular pattern because most of you know the purpose and need is fluid, which means that it can change throughout our preliminary design process. When we do that, the alternatives could change. So when that happens, we have to look at the impacts. Do we need to mitigate? Do we need to go back and change alternatives? Do we need to go back to the public or the other agencies? And when this process happens, we need to document it. As they say, document. But yeah, it's a fluid process. So purpose and need, that's one of the elements that we just learned. So a need is what problem needs to be fixed. A need must be data-driven and provide justification that there is a problem. The purpose is how are we going to fix that problem? So a purpose and a need explains why we are doing a project. It provides foundation for successful decision-making. It is the key factor in determining the range of alternatives, and it also provides the framework to compare these alternatives. We also sometimes have goals and objectives with our purpose and need statement, and these are more like things that we want to happen, but they don't have to happen to meet the purpose and need, but they do measure success. So examples of need, we see a lot of projects that say capacity issues, congestion, system linkage, legislation. It could be something changed and we need to improve our project, our roadways, safety. Roadway deficiencies can lead to safety issues. Modal relationships, we're looking more at pedestrian and bicycle facilities. Social demands and economic development. All of these elements must be supported by data. So alternative analysis, this is an example. Well, it's actually just a markup of where we have different alternatives. You can see in green, blue, red, orange. So alternative analysis is a process used to develop, evaluate, and eliminate alternatives based on the purpose and need. So we're only required to develop a reasonable number of alternatives, and most people want to know, well, what's reasonable? It depends on the project, depends on the size of the project. It could be one alternative, one build alternative, and the no build is the only two that you actually have to have, but that's where your purpose and need comes in. We must have logical termini. This means it must start and stop at a logical place. We must have independent utility. So it must be one complete project. It can't depend on another project. And it must not restrict future projects. But as I mentioned, the no build is always included, and it's a baseline that we compare the impacts from the other alternatives. So here's an example, actually, Tracy will recognize this. This is Greenwood Road. Starts at Cane Run Road and ends at Dixie Highway. So that shows it has logical termini. So impacts is another one of our elements. Direct effects occur at the same time as the project or the action. Indirect effects occurs later or away from the action. Cumulative impacts is past, present, and foreseeable future. I'll be honest, this one was always hard for me to envision. And when we were working on the Plant Side Drive project, it was brought up that if we extended to Taylorsville Road, then they would want to build behind Kroger. And that could be looked at as a cumulative impact on that historic district. Significance is the primary factor for document level. Context is the type of impact, biological, geographical, social. Intensity is the severity of the impact. So potential impacts are basically the same areas that we do our environmental review on. We look at air, noise, water, threatened and endangered species, historic properties, both above and below ground, the amount of right-of-way needed, if there's any relocations, hazardous materials, prime farmland, environmental justice, climate change, community impacts, section 4F, which is public parks, recreational areas, wildlife refuges, and historic sites. 6F is the land and water conservation properties. Oh, so hold on a minute. Joe threw this one in there. With the new executive order, we do not look at environmental justice or climate change. So if you have an impact now, what do? You mitigate. So what we try to do when we mitigate is we first try to avoid. And that's where I was saying you might come up with a new alternative in order to avoid something that you found was a historic property or, a endangered species. So if you can't avoid, then you minimize. If you do impact it, you could repair, reduce, or compensate. I'll be honest, from what I've learned is we compensate. We do not try to repair like streams based on our history of when we did do that. So archaeological mitigation, we had a Old Henry project where we had phase 3 archaeology, and what they do is they dig up the artifacts, they record them and document it in a report, and then we have a public education component where we put information on the Kentucky Archaeological website. As I mentioned, you can have stream or wetland restoration. KYTC does not do that. We pay into the stream restoration fee, and another company will do the stream restoration. We do, however, build sound barrier walls, and these are to mitigate for noise. There's historic bridge documentation. When we need to replace a historic bridge, there is a state level documentation that's needed. That way we can record the structure before it is gone. Endangered species protection. I had to ask my biologist what this was because I stole this slide from Tyler. And this apparently is a bat-friendly cave gate that keeps the people out, because people are the biggest threat to bats. So when they're in their roosting or their maternity, it keeps people out. Well, at least it's supposed to. Public involvement. So who is the public? The public is anyone who resides, visits, or is interested in the project area. How do we reach the public? We have public meetings, virtual and in person, through social media, through news outlets, that could be newspaper or TV, and we do sometimes do direct mail. level of public involvement should be proportional with the project complexity. This means a small intersection project, our public involvement might be just meeting with the property owners in that area. A little larger project will have a public meeting. If it's an expressway or something, a lot of times that's just people that drive through there, and we'll have online public involvement. That way we can try to reach the truck drivers and people that are just driving through the area and get them to fill out an online survey. So we want to reach out. When do we want to reach out to the public? As soon as it's reasonable. So you don't want to reach out to them if you don't really know what's going on. But we do reach out early and often, as Tom Hall says. This is just another picture of a social media ad in a public meeting. So interagency coordination is another element. So we want to involve state and federal agencies. FHWA is the lead agency. KYTC is the joint lead agency. We got cooperating agencies like local and state government agencies, Louisville Metro, Oldham County, Shepherdsville. That's just examples. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and federally recognized tribes. And as I mentioned earlier, documentation is another element. The NEPA process leads to a document. It details the decisions that were made. It's our administrative record and it's our legal defense. If it wasn't documented, it did not happen. So there's the environmental document types. There's environmental impact statement, the EIS. It has known significant impacts. That's rare for KYTC. It takes multiple years. The Louisville Bridges was an EIS. Environmental assessment. The significance of the impacts are unknown. That's why they do an environmental assessment. Usually that'll lead to what they call a FONSI, a finding of no significant impact. But it could, if they find the impacts are significant, it could push it up to an EIS or down to a CE, which is a categorical exclusion. And those have no significant impacts. This is what we do probably 99% of the time. I've worked on a couple of EA FONSIs, just reevaluations, but I think only 2 that I can think of in my 6 years. So a CE3 FHWA needs to sign and usually takes 9 to 12 months. A CE2 only needs up to DEA signature, 6 to 9 months. A CE1 is and a CEMP both need district approvals, and a CEMP is for minor projects. We're estimating 6 to 9 months and could be 24 hours to 3 months. And let me explain why this says 24 hours. We have our little general maintenance projects, say like repaving the interstate using federal money. I can actually do what they call a PA2 for our section 106, and it doesn't need any section 7, which is biology. And so basically it's just a paperwork exercise. So that's how we could get through them pretty quickly. So this is our categorical exclusion decision matrix. I know it's really small for you guys, and if anybody would want a copy, I can send it to them. But this is what I use. I mainly look at the amount of right-of-way, whether we're going to have an adverse effect on a section 106, which is archaeology and cultural historic, and the stream permits. Those are the 3 main things. And adverse effect on a threatened or endangered species that can move us up to a categorical exclusion 3. So NEPA reevaluations. This is something of interest to you all. After we have the original NEPA document, we do have to reevaluate. Reevaluations are necessary throughout the project to ensure that the document level is still valid and no significant changes have occurred since the original approval. The following reasons, the following examples are actions that could trigger a reevaluation, a scope or design change. If you change an alignment during final design because you find out that there's a utility or something there that you didn't know about, then we have to go back and we have to clear the new area and the design through the different impacts. We have to go back to SHPO and talk to them about make sure we're not having an adverse effect if there was a historic site there. Reevaluation, regulation changes, which means, if the laws change, we may have to go back and do a reevaluation. But the main reason is if we're moving into a new phase. Right away in utilities, we a lot of times do that together. We reevaluate it under one document, but it depends on how the money is programmed. And then construction. So reevaluations are valid for 2 years or until another action triggers a need. So if we did reevaluate for a new phase, but then you have a design change, we may have to reevaluate again before that 2 years is up. So state-funded projects. State-funded projects do not need a NEPA document. We have to consider, though, our potential impacts and be aware of other interests. We still want to involve public and other agencies. And it allows more flexibility in decision-making that is not always available with our federal projects. We are, however, fully accountable to the public for our actions on these state-funded projects. So, another thing I want to point out about state-funded projects, if a federal permit, say we need a stream permit or we affected the wetland, is required, then that triggers what's called a federal nexus. And we do have to complete some environmental review. This is usually the section 106, the historic and archaeology, and the section 7. The Army Corps of Engineers requires us to do these reviews and give them the information prior to the permit being approved. So we usually wait to submit our application until we have this information to submit. So if there's any possibility that you're going to use federal funds, it's just good practice to go ahead and do a full NEPA document. And that way you don't experience delays. I know we've done this several times where we've had state funding for our design, but we're expecting to try to get construction funding that's federal. So we will go ahead and go through the NEPA process and have a NEPA document with our state funded design. So current NEPA climate, I mentioned this Executive Order 15154. This is one of Joe's slides, and I honestly didn't know who this guy was till Andy brought it up. So apparently this is Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. So Joe apparently has a pretty good sense of humor. But the executive order is for unleashing American energy. The purpose is to expedite this and simplify the permitting process. It did make some changes to the Council on Environmental Quality and their role with coordinating between agencies. It withdraws some of the recent CEQ rulemaking, and it directs agencies to revise NEPA procedures. So I can tell you, as far as KYTC, we did have to revise a couple of our documents, basically to take out the language about the environmental justice and some of the cumulative effects. And that's it. Anybody have any questions? Please let me know.
Donna, I appreciate it, having had a preliminary line and grade meeting earlier today with KYTC. We've gotten to rehash some of the same subjects, so it's in effect all the time.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Donna?
I would just make a comment that, Donna explained the sort of what the 7 essential elements of NEPA, that process and the levels of environmental documents. And, when we start any project, you know, we have to generally hire a consulting firm to work through the design development and develop the NEPA document. And so, you know, we have to sort of sit down and think about how the project is gonna unfold and how complicated it is, and sort of assign tasks and values to all that work, you know, how many alternatives will we look at? If you pay a consultant to look at 2 alternatives, that's a lot cheaper than looking at 12 alternatives. If the environmental document is an environmental assessment versus a CE for minor projects, the environmental costs would be, evaluation costs would be much cheaper. So I guess my point in saying, in mentioning this is that, you know, each project steps through all of these. Really NEPA is the decision-making process for federal aid projects, and, you know, at the beginning of the project, you really have to step through all that. And I would also say that, you know, that's how you kind of develop your scope of work, to hire a consultant to do engineering. That's kind of how you develop your cost estimates for construction, is understanding all of those details. So I just wanted to mention that. I could probably go on a whole lot about that. But I would also mention is NEPA is the underpinning for project development decision making. You got a purpose and need, you look at alternatives, you evaluate each of those alternatives, you talk to the public, you bring them along the way, you talk to other agencies, and and through all that communication, you document this environmental decision. And really the environmental decision is the project. You know, what are we trying to fix? What is our solution? And you have a little set of plans, preliminary engineering plans, 30% plans that sort of back that up. But the reality is, you know, the NEPA document is your environmental decision. You know, what did we decide to do? A 2-lane road, a 3-lane road, a multi-use path, or a sidewalk? But that's really, you know, and that's why the importance of NEPA is that it really documents the decision, and it justifies. Donna kind of said this, but I'll reiterate that it justifies the public expenditure. And so it's a really, really important underpinning of use of federal aid. And I thought it was really cool. Donna covered a lot of ground. And I think that Donna, maybe you could expand, like if other people were interested in learning about NEPA training, is there training opportunities offered by the cabinet?
I have been to 2 of the NEPA trainings, but they were offered by FHWA, and they have only been every 5 years. So I was lucky that I got it right before I started this position, and then I did it again last year. There are, and excuse me if I got the initials wrong, NHS, I think. There are like online trainings that you could look into, but I don't know if it's specifically for NEPA.
Yeah, probably NHI, I think, National Highway Institute. Yeah.
Thank you.
And for those that are in the room, you might say, hey, where's Chris today? Where's Chris Nicholas? You may be saying that, maybe you're not saying that, but where she is in Indianapolis at NEPA training, believe it or not. So it's something that we as transportation planning professionals, we have to know some level of this. And we'll never know all the stuff that Donna knows, but we need to know a lot of this before we step in it on some of our projects. And so I guess to that, Donna or Tom or anybody else, you know, is there a common pitfall that you're seeing from the LPAs and the environmental process? Is there a step that they're like, man, I didn't think that should take that long, or and they screwed up and it takes a lot longer? Or is it, I think that reassessment, I hear that happening a lot, right? Well, the environmentals, we got to redo it. Is that maybe as common as anything else? Is the thing that kind of slows us down the most on projects?
In my opinion, the thing that slows us down most is presupposing a solution.
Yeah.
Well, that's where a local agency, or even, you know, sometimes other, you know, larger agencies presume a solution, and NEPA doesn't really allow for that. NEPA says, first of all, what are you trying to fix? What are the options that you look at? And then how do you determine what's the best solution for the public interest? And a lot of folks, a lot of, people just getting into it don't realize that you still have to step through the process. And you may ultimately end up with what was desired. But we're still obligated to step through the process and not presuppose solutions.
And that gets tricky when you're submitting projects to our long range plan and to our TIP, because in a way they're in conflict. That is, we need at least a decently described project description so that we can plug it into our travel model so that we can execute the air quality conformity process. We need to know how many lanes there are. And so what we always like to say, because it's true, is that we need something up front, but it can always change. We can change that easily. And so that's the hard part, because those two, federal laws are almost in conflict with each other, aren't they? And so that's a never-ending battle that I think we have in an agency like ours, in a non-attainment area, that has to do that conformity process, because we need the details. That process demands them, but this other process demands open-mindedness. Yeah. So that's a tricky one, and it probably will be until something significant changes. So
yeah, and we KYTC just often describes our projects in the KIPTA process as we vaguely need to reduce congestion on a roadway or improve safety. We're not giving you great detail about that, but we add a line and we say project will consider 3-lane widening, or we'll consider adding a sidewalk. It gives you enough information to model it, but it doesn't force a solution down the public's throat. And so that's the balance that we've come up with, which isn't really the best balance, but it works.
Again, that conflict, it's not going to get fixed anytime soon. We'll always have that conflict until we don't have to do conformity process, perhaps, and that's.
And it's a nice process. I think it proportionally, even on smaller projects that don't require NEPA, to utilize those, getting stakeholders involved and analyzing other alternatives that you might not have looked at.
If there are ways as local governments that you want to suggest to KIPTA staff, we're always looking at ways to speed the environmental process, speed the project development process along. And NEPA stuff, we don't necessarily have that expertise unless Chris comes back knowing it all from Indianapolis. But we've developed things like red flag maps over the years. Maybe that's helpful. And then if you say it is, we will keep on doing that. Maybe there's some other things that we need to be doing. If so, we're open-minded to doing that here, because anything that gets this process, in and out the door by following all these regulations, that's what we got to do, and do it as expeditiously as we can.
Hey, I wanted to point out with your question about delays. We have noticed, and I'm not going to point anybody out, but that if you keep changing your mind and changing the project, then obviously we have to keep reevaluating and looking at it. And then if this drags out, if you're pushing, say, 10 years on cultural historic, you have to do a whole nother report and survey forms and update stuff. So that takes time and money. The biology, now granted, we've got great biologists at the DEA, and they do a lot of the work themselves, but if it's more than 5 years, they have to redo their no effect form. But also if species get listed or delisted, so usually, even if it's only been 2 years, I'll ask my biologist, do we need to do a new form? So obviously, I'm not saying, as you go through final design, don't make changes, but think about how the change is going to impact the process.
Yeah. Donna, thank you so much for presenting to us today.
You're welcome. I will say though, Tom, thanks for your input. And when Andy first asked me, I thought, well, heck, Tom Hall knows as much or more than I do.
And I would only say that I learned it the hard way.
Yeah, thank you. Andy, agenda item 6, the Unified Planning Work Program.
All right. Greg's going to put in a presentation. I'll be brief. It's that time of year where NPOs are required to update their UPWPs, their Unified Planning Work Programs. I brought a draft version of it to the TPC back in February. They're due to the states, the KYTC and NDOT by the end of February. Drops that is. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Just to let you know, this is the annual in our case. It's biannual in some cases. We do one of these every year, and it talks about our planning priorities. It's all the money that we're bringing in from our federal partners, and it explains what we're going to do with that money effectively. Next slide, please. Again, describes what we do, how much it'll cost, and where the money comes from. Just said that. It includes not just our operations here at KIPTA, but it has in the rideshare program that is related we administer here at KIPTA. But it also has some of the planning studies that these planning dollars go toward, and the discretionary grants. Those are required to be in there too. So our SS4A grant, for example, or in the railroad, our Federal Railroad Administration one are in there too. So next slide, please. Here's the schedule for this year's version. Here we are right in the middle of it, seeking your all's review. It is posted on our website. And so the final approval is April 24th. We'll seek approval from both the TPC, since it's budgetary, also from the KIPTA Board of Directors. Those are due April 30th to our friends at KYTC and NDOT. Of note, we're still, I think technically, I guess the comment period never ends. We don't get to establish the comment period directly. However, KYTC is pretty adamant to get them all by the end of March. So I think I have all the comments, in other words, and I think, in other words, I think I've made all the changes. So we should be in good shape with what's on our website at this time. Next slide, please. So some highlights. That's probably more important than some of that other stuff of what it is. You'll be interested to know that our Kentucky PL funding, the PL funding is the Federal Highways funding, Metropolitan Planning funding. That increased this year on the Kentucky side by about 2%. So that's another $28,000. That's cool. Even cooler, that KYTC has for many years covered some of the match on our PL money. So the planning money, just like the project money, the capital money that you all often receive, is 80-20, federal and local, 80-20 split. KYTC has traditionally covered 5%. So locals had to, KIPTA pays 15%, feds 80%, and KYTC has covered 5%. That's been awesome. Well, that is awesome, but what's even more awesome is that they covered 10%. And so KYTC is committed to covering 10%, and that's fantastic. That puts us on par with several neighboring states, not the other state that KIPTA deals with, not Indiana, where we get zero match. That's okay. But some of the other states around Kentucky, I think Ohio and West Virginia kind of matches theirs. That's in the case that the NPO's made, and it's real. It's the real deal. A relatively small investment by the state government goes a really long way into easing the local dues on an agency like KIPTA and our counterparts around the state. So it's a really good investment in our eyes, of course. But very importantly, that it reduces our local match that are paid for by local dues by KIPTA member governments by about 72,000. 72,000, that's even with the increased funding that I mentioned before. So that's really cool. It's a win-win, isn't it? On the Indiana side, funding did decrease a little bit. It was predictable. It decreased from a high water mark that would have been in fiscal 24 when there's some carryover distributions that hit all the Indiana MPOs. In about a year ago, let's say, I think it was, the formula that that the Indiana MPO Council develops changed, and it made it a little bit more fair, perhaps, for all. But nonetheless, when the dust settled, we're down by about 21,000, but it is quite a bit more than we got just a few years ago. So I think that's an important perspective. And some of that, by the way, had to do with the changes in the 2020 census and how other parts of Indiana perhaps grew faster than our urban area. This year's PWP includes our Federal Highway grant and our Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. I already mentioned that. It also includes $185,000 federal dollars reserved for planning studies. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on this agenda. It anticipates a carryover of $170,000 in Indiana. We won't know until the year ends how much we will have. Remember, or maybe don't remember, but I'll say it for those that never knew it. In Kentucky, we talk about how we can carry over our project money, our capital money for projects, but Indiana doesn't allow us to do that. So it's just use it or lose it for projects. The exact opposite is true on planning. In Indiana, we can carry it over. In Kentucky, we cannot. So fun times. It has, and this is important, this next to last one, complete streets planning. There's a new work element in there. A couple years ago, the feds required MPOs, and I think it was MPOs and states, but it was at least MPOs to show that they do 2.5% or more of their efforts go toward complete streets planning. So we had to prove it in our work program over the last couple of years, and that's fine. We did it. Sometime within the last year, there was some reinterpretation of some of that, and whether or not that 2.5% was the maximum that you could do, and do what? They made it that the feds made it so that you can get unmatched money if you're doing complete streets planning. Okay, and so requires not 20% from the Indiana side or 10% from the Kentucky side, 0%. That's fantastic. And so this year, KIPTA is going to go out on a bit of a limb here, and we put a good number of hours, a fair amount of hours. I think it amounts to, I want to say, around $30,000 worth of hours toward complete streets planning. That we know that we're going way above the 2.5% minimum, but the recent reinterpretation said no, there is no cap on it. You can do unmatched money up until however much you're doing, and so it's a relatively small percentage of the work program, but we're going to do that for the first time this year because while 10% match is awesome, 0% match is even better, type of thing, and we're already doing it, so we might as well, right? We're already doing that work. Couple more things, some of the feedback we got, and so this is the difference between what we presented to the TPC earlier. There's some Federal Highway Kentucky had a few questions about some of the financials. We made those. I think they were all relatively minor. Or I know they were all relatively minor. We got consistent feedback from multiple federal agencies on that second bullet point. Make sure that our work program, just like our new tip that we'll be talking about officially next month, it takes out any references to executive orders that have been rescinded in the last few months. And there are multiple ones that have been. And so I think we've got that cleared up. I think we've got those things removed. There's also these things called planning emphasis areas that the feds have had traditionally. Apparently they're just no more, okay? And so basically they said, get those out of there too. So we did. They said remove references to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Well, that was just another name for the IIJA. And so what's being mandated now is essentially is call it by its original name. Don't call it by the name that they came up with. That was in the vernacular, I guess, shortly after. So IIJA is what we should call Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, the current highway authorization. Today, I'm seeking your all's recommendation for approval to the TPC later in this month. Again, there's not much change to it year over year. I went through the highlights. Overall, it's about a $5 million effort. A good chunk of that is through our SS4A program. So we're running about $4 million, 4.25. And so it's not quite status quo, but it's more or less status quo with some of those changes, all the things I mentioned today. So that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions about UPWP.
Yes, will we get an action first?
Yes, please.
Do we have a motion to recommend the UPW to TPC?
Yes, that'd be action.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think Larry was for favor.
Larry, you're voting in favor, right?
That's correct, yes.
Or I shouldn't have said it that way, but yeah, is that what you're voting for? Yes, yes.
There was a question.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
The motion passes.
Thank you.
Spencer, you have information on the KYTC shift program. Yep. The process.
Pulling up a PowerPoint now. Yep, we're going to talk about the KYTC shift 2026 sponsorship process. Alrighty, so here's just a quick overview of the SHIFT 2026 project sponsorship process. projects in KOTC's chat database are eligible to be sponsored. Allocation of projects to each KOTC district office for sponsorship, so they allocate a certain number of sponsorships to each district office, and they also allocate a certain number to ads and APOs to sponsorship. There's no reason to sponsor the same projects, so we will basically create these lists of projects. That way we don't have any overlapping with KYTC. If they give them to us before we have our meetings, then we'll already have them, but if they give them to us afterwards, that's okay too. We'll just kind of go down the list. So if Bullock County was gonna get 10, we'll come up with 20. And you know, if DC picks 10 from that list, then we'll have 10 more. Not all projects are eligible. In prior iterations, KIPTA has waited until after KYTC, but it doesn't have to be that way. And it determines which projects get scored. So to get a score through the SHIP process, it needs to be sponsored first, so that when we get to the boosting phase here in the fall, summer, fall, yeah. You know, it'll have a score that we'll be able to see, and we'll see the score breakdown through all the different scoring categories. And, you know, you'll have the total final score before it's boosted. Here are the number of sponsorships by Highway District Office on the left, ads and MPOs. You can see we have 49, it's down there on the right, and then District 5 has 67. So same as SHIP 124, and the same number. And here is the breakdown from 2024 of how many sponsorships we gave out per county. So Bullock County got 11, Jefferson got 30, Oldham got 8, and then KYTC sponsored 7 projects in Bullock County, 30 in Jefferson, and 7 in Oldham, which ended up being a total of 18 in Bullock, 60 in Jefferson, and 15 in Oldham. We looked at doing it on a per capita basis, just to kind of see. That would be the breakdown right there for Bullock, Jefferson, and Oldham County. It was 41 for Jefferson, about 4 for Bullock, about 4 for Oldham. We kind of did like a middle ground option. Gave Jefferson County, like for discussion amongst KIPTA staff, a couple more, and just took one away from Bullock and Oldham counties. Kind of keep it a little bit more on a per capita basis. So I know we talked about that a lot at KIPTA, kind of in general.
So this year, more than perhaps prior versions, given the time constraints, I think we're gonna do the independent meetings with Oldham County and Bullock County and then Jefferson County interest. And so, you know, what we really want to make sure is we got the right or an agreeable number here, the bottom line number here. Yeah. So that when we're doing that process that Spencer described, we're gonna come up with enough that will, when KYTC sponsors 7 in Oldham County, we'll go with the next 7 or whatever we end up with highest projects in Oldham County for sponsorship. Because the timing of it requires ads, MPOs, and district offices to sponsor their projects by May 9th, aka before we meet again. So we're gonna meet independently. We hope to have it done by TPC, but there's no guarantee that we will. It's gonna be tight by TPC. But if we can get the number of sponsorships done, we're gonna leave that up into each counties to make sure that the county officials have the right number of projects sponsored. That's our plan this time. So
yeah, so this will be an action item. Really, it's kind of up to everybody in the room. Do we want to do it the same way as last time? Just give out, since we have the same number of sponsorships, or we could do it on a per capita basis, or we could do it kind of for our discussion of kind of meet somewhere in the middle. You know, that bottom one.
KIPTA staff certainly are not recommending per capita. That's not enough for Bullock and Oldham counties. You know, we kind of skipped over. There's 27 for the ad counties. That's a part of this too, and that's 4 rural counties, all of which are smaller than both Bullock and Oldham counties. Mick, what do we do, like 5 in each, and then Shelby got more than that, or 5, 7 for one of them, I think?
We had 10 for Shelby, 7 for Spencer, 5 for Henry, and 5 for Campbell.
Yeah, and so, you know, on a per capita basis, there's far more sponsorships in the rural KIPTA region than there is urban. Those 4 counties combined, if I'm not mistaken, are about the size of probably somewhere between Bullitt and Oldham County by themselves, saying nothing about Jefferson County. And so we get what we get. We get 49, and so we just need to be smart about it and do the best we can with 49 that we get. And you saw it on the screen. This isn't the deep cut that we need to be making here. I think what we found through experience is there's enough sponsorships probably to go around. How many highway plan projects are going to be in these counties this time next year? Okay, probably smaller than this number. These numbers, especially remember KYTC is going to be sponsoring some on top of these. Okay, so that's really important to note. So yeah, so we want to talk about that bottom line number today and with PPC. So be happy to answer, seek any feedback from this group about that.
So I guess just to be clear, you're asking for an action on whether to base it on the previous numbers or a moderate adjustment for per capita.
Yeah.
I just wanted to reiterate maybe what Spencer said is that, you know, every 2 years, KYTC comes up with this list of projects to recommend to get funding in our highway plan. And so for the next 2 years, that's what, you know, that gets considered by the governor and the legislature. And when it gets approved, that's our funding, KYTC's plan for putting money on highway projects. And what Kip is telling you is that the first step here is in order to get a project even considered for that money, it has to get sponsored. And so that's really important. So like for example, City of Louisville, that gets quite a few projects in the highway plan that are important to them, to their local economy, local transportation network. If they need to think real hard about making sure that the projects that are important to the City of Louisville get a sponsorship. Now, KYTC may sponsor a few of the projects that are important to them, but if KYTC doesn't do that, it's up to the City of Louisville and other cities, counties to make sure that through KIPTA's process, you apply a sponsorship so your project can move forward and hopefully get highway plan money. And I hope that's kind of helpful because, you know, the local governments may not have been through the process before. It's important.
Another thing I'll add is I would say a joint effort with KYTC District 5 and KIPTA. You saw those sponsorships that are on one of those pages, and there's like 67 plus 49 plus 27 for me for the RTC. It's a big number, and that's a big thing to wrangle. Other ads, other MPOs, and other highway districts have it perhaps much easier because there's smaller numbers in play, and probably a proportional amount of need. So we've coordinated with a story map that was developed by KIPTA staff and that KYTC shared in a series of meetings just last week with the delegation of legislators, state reps and state senators from our region, because one of the things that we've collectively seen is that this process, the building blocks of the recommended highway plan, but they get the final say, right? The legislators get the final say come next springtime on many of these decisions. So getting them involved earlier I think is important. We've got some good feedback, I feel like, you know, can't get enough of it. So we're trying that out this year, and hopefully we'll build upon it maybe the next go around too, because I think that's important so that we don't cross the wires too much when it comes to the recommended highway plan that comes out of KYTC, let's say, and then that enacted highway plan that comes out of the General Assembly next year. So we're really trying to make it a smoother process in conjunction with our two agencies here.
And just one more tiny thing is that you know, where do these projects come from? You know, KYTC, my office has a list of about 450 unfunded needs, and it's billions of dollars worth of need. but only 120 or so of those projects can move forward in the shift process. And so, you know, hopefully, our, you know, through KIPTA, the local governments can look at all those 450 projects and pick the best projects to sponsor, so those can move forward in the shift process and hopefully get recommended highway plan.
Yeah, I don't mean to speak for everyone, but I think through my opinion anyways, there's enough sponsorships to go around, right? With the boosting is where it really gets tight. We can only boost, I think it's 20, okay? We're sponsoring over 100 collectively. We can only boost 20 by the MPO and 20 by the highway district or some number that's commensurate with that highway district. So that's the tricky part, and that's later this summer.
True, but just to reiterate my point, if it doesn't get sponsored, it doesn't get to play.
Oh, yeah.
And so it doesn't get a shift score, it falls out of the process early. And so we've seen that happen on some locally important projects.
Do you have an update on when KYTC will have their sponsorships?
We think no, next week, or I'm not sure when next week, hopefully next week. We're still pulling in legislative input and making sure that we have all the legislators' needs represented in our data.
So again, our efforts, when we get whether we end up in this bottom table or something close to it, I would imagine, we'll be ready to roll either way. If we have theirs, it'll make it easier on our meetings when we come to Oldham County or Bullitt County or here for the metro meeting. If they're not done, we will rank more projects, and then we will just make sure we have enough, and we'll just go down the list. And once they are done, we'll go ahead and sponsor the top ones. So we'll be prepared to go either way, or whenever those come into us. So I think we'll be in good shape and get them sponsored by, again, May the 9th is the drop dead deadline. So hopefully we'll be done well before then. Whether it'll be done before TPC later in the month, that might be a different story. It's gonna be close. So again, the action we're seeking is for this body to recommend something to the TPC, whether it's 10, 32, and 7, whether it's what we did last time, which was 10,
11, 30, and 8.
11, 30, and 8. We can do the per capita one. I don't think that's fair to our Bullitt and Oldham County friends. That's too few, right? Especially when the neighboring counties are much smaller than them. Through the RTC process, got more than double that number. Yeah, I personally, for one, don't like that idea. So, and I don't think anybody's proposing that, to be clear. So, our recommendation is 10, 32, and 7. That's hopefully meets it in the middle somewhere. But we're open to any comments, feedback.
Or motion.
Or motion, except to keep the staff recommendations. Yeah, that's fine too.
Motion to approve the staff recommendation.
You have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll keep, and then, of course, we've already said, for those that be a part of those meetings, we've scheduled, I think, 2 of them now. And then, the Jefferson County one will get done around the same time. We've got some irons on the fire.
Communication going through.
That's right.
Yeah.
Doodle poll and all.
Yeah, we'll go for that
stuff. Yeah.
If you have any questions, you can email me or Andy or email Tom Hall if you have any shift questions. I mean, that was more than me, so.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, next we've got Brady with the FY 2025 to 2028 Transportation Improvement Program.
You mentioned I'm pinch hitting for Chris Nicholas today on this. I'll keep it relatively brief and just give you all an update on the TIP development. A reminder, some key details. The fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2026 Transportation Improvement Program is currently active still. And it's fiscally constrained. It is a subset of our current NTP, the Connecting Kentuckiana 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This new TIP, fiscal year 25 through 28, will also be a subset of the current NTP. So the same changes that are project changes, there's 20 or so project changes that are occurring as a part of the new tip. Those same changes will be reflected in Amendment 9 to the MTP, which, like I said, is still going to remain active. The MTP is in the early stages of development, and the next tip following this new tip, so the tip after fiscal year 25 through 28, will be updated concurrently with the new MTP in a couple of years. Okay, as far as the schedule goes, we have a draft that has been prepared, already held our interagency consultation group meeting, and that draft is available to the public. Public comment period opened yesterday, and the link to the draft is available online. As Greg, you know, assuming it's been sent out to this body and
TPC has, yes.
TPC
They did receive it, today, so they put the instructions to share it among constituents, as you feel see fit.
Okay. Great, so that public comment period will run through, May 7th for the tip. Or sorry, May 8th for the, right, sorry, it is May 7th, and then the, comments will go to the TPC, and then we will present the final draft to the TTCC and the TPC in May. And then the federal review process will begin pending approval. The link to the public comment, for the new tip is on KIPTA's Transportation Improvement Program webpage there. You can see at the bottom, there's a link provided. As a couple of notes while you're reviewing this new tip, there could be a few grammar or formatting things that we change in the meantime, between now and then. We will be taking into account all the public comments, and if there's anything we need to change, then we will do so. The main things that you're going to see that are different in this tip than last tip are going to be the tip project listings, which just shows which projects are in the tip, as we're looking at different fiscal years. There's going to be different projects added or removed. The figures are going to be updated. The figures show financial estimates over the new tip years, as well as other figures show projects that scored higher in our scoring system based on the category associated with our MTP goals and objectives. So, for example, for safety, there's a figure that says here are the top 15 highest scoring safety projects in the tip. And so those are all updated in this new draft as well as there's a few other wording changes and opportunities that we took to clarify a few things. For example, there's a couple of new paragraphs that explain in greater detail how child projects and parent projects work as they're displayed in the tip. So those are a few things you may notice as you take this opportunity to review this draft. And no action requested unless there's any questions for me at this time.
Yeah, just remember this, while we certainly can't refer to it as a minor tip update. We're not allowed to do that. In essence, it's the 2-year mark of that 4-year bigger cycle, which will be updated with the MTP. So, again, Amendment 9 of the MTP effectively are the same changes that are to this tip as compared to what's in the current tip. Plus the projects that are being run on the line for those latter 2 years, and the ones that are taken offline from the first 2 years of the current tip that we're getting ready to, we're going to be retired soon.
Anything for Brady? No. Like I said, since you still got the podium, you can tell us about the FY26 call for studies.
Okay. Andy mentioned that a little bit earlier when he was talking about the WP. We have $185,000 set aside for planning studies for fiscal year 26. Just a reminder of the schedule here. We made that announcement at February TPC that funds were going to be available. Application period ran from March 3rd to April 1st. And we provided a little bit of additional information at last TTCC as well. We received 3 project applications that I'm gonna talk about in just a second. KIPTA staff are currently in the process of evaluating those applications and scoring them. And we will be providing a recommendation to award this $185,000 of funding to the TPC in April here in a couple of weeks. Reminder, these studies, if selected, have to be completed by the end of fiscal year 26, which is June 30th, 2026. So the first application we received was from Clark County for Salem Noble Road and Highway 62, the intersection there that been identified in the SS4A Safety Action Plan development process. And there is I believe it's ranked number 3 in the high injury network intersection for Clark County. Their proposal is essentially to further study that intersection to in preparation for seeking future design and construction funds to make improvements there. They're requesting $80,000 federal, which if it ended up being 20% match would be $100,000 total is what their estimate is. Keep in mind, Andy talked about it earlier, the match based on KYTC providing additional match from 5% to 10%. The match that will be required for these projects might be less than 20%, but depending on which projects are recommended for approval based on how much funding we have available, there could be overmatching as a possibility. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But the base is kind of 80-20 still. Shepherdsville submitted an application as well. They called the Central Bullitt County Traffic Master Plan. This study intends to look at a couple things, primarily sidewalk gaps and potential opportunities to improve their multimodal development in their city for connection and safety. They also want to look at some potential options to alleviate congestion whenever 65 gets backed up. That sends people right through the heart of their city. And so they're looking at, would potentially use this study to evaluate options for an alternative route or potentially bypass or something like that in the future. Their funding request is $100,000 federal, $125,000 total. Third one is from Louisville Metro. This is a trucking network action plan. They've received some complaints regarding truck traffic in certain historical areas in Louisville Metro, and they're looking to identify a network of existing and preferred freight routes and potential policies and best practices to manage freight traffic in Louisville Metro and kind of preserving and enhancing the livability of local neighborhoods dealing with that through traffic. Their funding request is $125,000 federal, which would scan around 20% there is $155,000. So those are the 3 applications. As you can see, we have $185,000 total. There's been requested $305,000 between the 3 applications. So KIPTA staff will need to look at that in our evaluation process that's ongoing for the recommendation to see later this month. What this is likely going to equate to is 2 of the 3 projects being selected or some kind of agreement to overmatch where perhaps one or several of the projects would have to overmatch heavily in order to get all 3 funded. So that will be the discussion with KIPTA staff and be presented to the TPC in a couple of weeks. Any questions for me about this process or these projects?
Being new here, some of the local plan, how much detail does it provide in terms of, like, is it the whole county, or are they showing you certain neighborhoods there?
My understanding is that it's for the Louisville metro area. Although I don't know if Mark Knoll is on the call, he may be able to answer that specific question better than me.
Yeah, I think, we would certainly focus on the nodes of commercial activity that we know drive a lot of demand for trucks, and then also have adjacent neighborhoods where we've heard a lot of concerns. So that would certainly be the area of focus. But yes, we would start by looking at the full Louisville Metro, Jefferson County, and then focus in on those specific commercial nodes from there.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Brady? No, thank you, Brady. Thank you. Next, other business.
Yeah, we got a couple things I want to go over for other business. Shouldn't take too long. I guess let's start with the first with recognizing a few folks that joined us a little bit after roll call. Aviance Webb from Federal Transit Region 4. Aviance, thanks for being here today. I want to recognize Larry Summers, City of New Albany. I think he's still on. If not, yeah, he's still here. Larry, thank you for joining us. Claire Orler from Kentucky DAQ. Our most recent TTCC chairman, Mr. Matt Mounier. He's here joining us today. Hello, Matt.
Thank you.
We got Don and Donna Harden. Don's from Mount Washington. Don, thank you for joining us. And then Vince Robinson from Trimark. I think I saw him on here too. Did I see him? Maybe I didn't. I think he was on here. So thank you all for joining us. No corny jokes until if he's not here, we can't hear him. Corny jokes. Okay, so the real other business. One of the things I want to talk about is the Safe Streets and Roads for All regional action plan. There's been some change since last month. There's been some change even, let's say, this week. A couple good, couple tricky. One, first and foremost, the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, was indeed released on or about last Monday, I guess, March 31st. Okay, March 31st. That window is open until June the 26th. Okay. There was some doubt about when it would be open, whether it would be open at all, right? March 31st, if I'm not mistaken, was when last year's opened, but with all the uncertainties now, not just we get the industry was concerned there. So so what does that mean? That means that we need to get everybody in a position to potentially put in for an implementation grant, whether it's individual or collective. That needs to be determined. What we hope to do is to have a steering committee workshop probably around the end of this month, right? End of this month, we should have all of the draft plans in hand, if not all, virtually all. Okay, I think we're going to have the first one is going to be fully done, we're told, by tomorrow or Friday. I think that's Trimble County. And the first one that's going to be done in Indiana is actually going to be Charlestown. So we'll have those, and then our consultants are going to be cleaning that up. What's taking so long on the draft plans, you might ask? If I can jump in and speak for the consultants in this case, some of that stuff that was in the UPWP, some of that language we had to get out, a lot of that stuff was put into these plans because that was part of the critical part of an action plan with some of those things about EJ and whatnot. And so all that stuff was in there, and candidly with you guys, it's kind of being mostly taken out. We are going to keep some of it. What our plan is, to be clear, is that while it be taken out of your plan proper, those maps are still good maps. Those maps are still relevant. And so we're going to provide that to everybody. Here's this other thing if you ever need it. That'll be a separate thing. But what we don't want to do, what we definitely don't want to do, and we don't think it's going to be this severe, but we don't want to have some language in there that will eliminate anybody from contention for an implementation grant. We definitely do not want to do that. Whether or not your action plan was built when the rules of the road were this and you followed them to a T, and then those rules changed in the middle of the process and you still have some of that stuff, whether or not we get punished or not, I don't know. I've heard some say that we would not. But I don't want to leave it to chance if we can, right? And so the draft plan should be in hand before too long. I think what we need to know, what everybody needs to know is that the information that you have from our one-on-one meetings we had probably a month and a half ago, whenever that was, not too long ago, from your local safety committee meetings, which have happened over the last few weeks as well. Those high injury networks, those high crash intersections, those are your spots, and you know what's on your list. And so we need to be thinking about individually and maybe collectively, but probably individually, what we're interested in pursuing. Remember, the minimum project size for an implementation grant is 2.5 million federal, okay? And so at 80/20, that makes a $3.125 million project. For those of you on the Kentucky side of the river, this project or this program should be eligible for that grant program of 2024. So that should limit your match if that's something you want to pursue. And if you want to pursue that through KIPTA, we would definitely be there right alongside you to say, even apply to the Economic Development Cabinet for that on your behalf. That should limit your all's match to some number that's like a range of 2 to 5%. Okay, 2 to 5 is a lot better than 20. And so unfortunately, that's not an option for our Southern Indiana friends. The 20 seems to be, there's no way around it type of thing. So, anyways, more on that soon. That meeting we hope to host is probably about the end of this month. Okay, and so we'll get that knocked out then. One of the other things before the draft plans are done is we're in the middle of, I guess you could say, of the second round of the public involvement. Each of y'all should have received an email probably about a week ago with a unique link for your community for the second round of public outreach survey. Okay, so that had your high injury network shown on a map. It limited them to the top 10. So right, some of the counties, some of the cities, maybe let's say there were 20 corridors on the high injury network. We're seeking feedback on the top 10, otherwise it'd get too cumbersome. Also seeking feedback on not just locations, but the improvement types, the countermeasure types. Which ones of these look good to you, Mr. and Mrs. Public? What do you know, are roundabouts a terrible idea? Okay, I'm guessing we'll get some people that say that. Are they a great idea? I'm guessing we'll get some people say that. That's another series of countermeasures seeking feedback for your individual communities. So please, please, please share that link to your counterparts in local government and even to the general public through social media or otherwise. I do have hot off the press a list of the interactions we have thus far. As of late last night, we had 292 people log on to to do those surveys, and so I want to give a lot of kudos to the places that have gotten a lot of clicks and surveys. At the top of the list are Mount Washington and Oldham County. So thank you all for whatever's going on in Oldham County and Mount Washington. Thank you for sharing that early and often, or at least early and hopefully often. J-Town's high up on that list too, Matt. And then in Shelby County as well. So Shelby County has gotten a lot out in the rural portion of the KIPTA region. I guess this is the kudos to those agencies and encouragement to our Southern Indiana friends to make sure that see if you can't get the word out over on the other side of the river better or more often, or to get some of those clicks, because this feedback, we hope it's real. You know, it's going to be real feedback, but we want to get that as a key part of this process, right? If everybody's saying yes, that number one spot is the worst spot, that's confirming what the data show. That's probably a really good spot to have a project. I think it is.
And I noticed you can do multiple counties. So like if you, like me, I live in Shelby, but work in Oldham County. So I drive through both counties a lot. So I did both surveys.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, you get down, it's a pretty relatively short survey, 5 minutes, something like that. You get down to the bottom of it, says, hey, would you like to do another one? Would you like to take one for another community? That's right. And so for, in particular, it's probably important in Jefferson County, where we have St. Matthews and J-Town plans. They probably want to do the Louisville Metro or the county at large. Same thing perhaps over in Clark County with Charlestown and Clarksville and Jeffersonville and the whole county. But again, it's gonna be the end of the month. And again, I think that's all I really want to say. Spencer, is there anything else that I missed? I apologize, we didn't have something more formal for you guys, but some of this has just changed in the last few days.
Yeah, did you mention anything about when people are getting their draft plan?
Yeah, so we'll get Trimble and Charlestown should be, Trimble, I think we're told by the end of the week, Charlestown either by the end of the week or by probably early next week. So we'll have one full cycle. Remember, the crash data are so different and there's the different considerations for the two states. So we'll have one ready for each, and that should really grease the skids to get the others pumped out. Everybody's is almost done. I want to be clear about that. But getting one done on one side of the river each is critical. It's a critical step for our consultants. Let's see. I think that's all I have. Are there any other questions on SS4A?
Well, when did you say the public involvement was closing?
So I don't think there's an official date, but it's probably gonna be sometime late in April.
There are changes based on that potentially.
Right, right. It needs to, okay. There probably will be a longer time that the survey might be out there. But at some point, we're gonna have to close it at least as much to say that in order for the feedback to be in the draft plans, we gotta say that, you know, 25 out of 30 were in favor of this one. We need to have something next couple weeks, and we'll have to edit the draft plans, by the way, for the ones that are done like this week. We'll plug that in, you know, as needed, for the final plan. So I hope, yes, sir.
And who's been out that email?
Who sent out the email
For the-
about
for the
the,
link?
you should have received an email from, Sam Weiser.
Okay.
Sam Weiser is with, Taylor Sifker Williams. So Sam, coordinated our outreach. She works with Amy Williams, and a lot of y'all know Amy. Amy's been to this meeting, quite a few times. So Sam Weiser from Taylor Sifker Williams sent that out to each individual. If you have the wrong link somehow, like if Oldham County had the general link or Oldham County had the Charlestown link, you're still okay. It's okay. No big deal. You don't have to fill it out. You can go, you'll be able to find the drop down to do Oldham County or where you live or where you work kind of thing. So again, we'd like to get as much feedback as we could. That last go around was fantastic, and thank you all for sharing that information. We had like, I think 12 to 1400 comments. That was a big number. It's a big number of comments, and so this one's a little different. This one's perhaps a little more straightforward. It's less open-ended. But we hope to make this a key part of what we're doing here. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to myself, Spencer, to Mick even. Mick's been working already with Trimble County, developing their early phases of their application. It sounds like they really want to pursue something. If you don't pursue this round of funds, at least nominally, there should be another round next year. Okay, remember the IIJA goes for one more year. This is the FY25 version of it. There will be another round next year, should be. If you're an Indiana agency, HSIP is administered through KIPTA. That's a 90-10 instead of the 80-20. So you get a 50% off coupon if you do the HSIP, as opposed to the SS4A. And then there's, as we've been saying consistently, you've got your playbook. Okay, you can do the low hanging fruit with county forces, city forces, etc. Yes, the SS4A implementation grant is out there. Yes, we would like to get as much of that money as we can back in our region. But the reality of it is they've said that they expect to award, I think it was 40 to 70 implementation grants are going to be awarded this go around. Okay. If we send in 16 of them, one for each local jurisdiction here, are we going to get all 16 funded? I don't know, maybe, probably not, but maybe, if there's only 40 nationally. So there will be another bites of the apple in the future. I think also remember that minimum 2.5 million. Be thinking about that if you need to partner with a neighboring agency, or somebody has a great idea for us to coordinate some consistent project across the KIPTA region, Indiana portion of the KIPTA region perhaps, or something like that, to get to that minimum threshold. There's a consistent project. We're certainly open-minded to that here at KIPTA. So
there's also the grant, you know, the KIP through Kentucky. Yeah.
Yes.
The match. So
yes. I think we can and we should. Remember, that's for discretionary. Excuse me. We can't use the word discretionary anymore. That's taboo. Also, it's no longer discretionary grants. It's competitive grants. I don't know why discretionary is taboo. I can see why some of the other stuff is taboo. Discretionary, I'm not sure, because discretionary competitive, I think in this context certainly mean the same. Anyways, the competitive grant process, if it's a competitive grant, Kentucky agencies and Kentucky local governments are eligible to get that match relief to help match the federal funds. So it'd be 80-15. State economic development might cover 15. If you're a medium to big county, you'd be on the hook for 5, is our understanding how that would work. So that's pretty cool. That's a 75% off coupon if you would on this. So can't beat that. Almost can't beat that. So, any other questions? All right, that concludes my other business. I'm sorry. Thanks so much time. Yes.
Anyone else have other business to bring up?
I'll just briefly mention that, Amy talked about in the shift process, KYTC and KIPTA, we were spitballing ways to reach out to the legislature early in the shift process. And that, KIPTA created a GIS map, an interactive map that's pretty easy to use for our legislators to see what projects are in their area. And it really is big, we met with these legislators recently. They have all really mentioned that that's a super helpful tool and that's not something KIPTA had to do. It's something that you guys were willing to help us with, and I just wanted to express a little bit of gratitude for your team helping us with that, because it seems to have really hit the mark.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, and we'll use that and expand on it even potentially in these county meetings. So it's and a big shout out to Zach Herzog. I know he's on here.
He was, he just left.
Man,
He just dropped off.
Coincidental, Zach's our GIS manager, and also to Mick for coordinating the projects and Spencer as well. It's again, our burden, District 5's and KIPTA's, is larger than anywhere else in the state, and it's probably not even close. And so we're expanding our game here this year, and hopefully, whether it's we're setting the bar high for others to follow. I don't know. I think we are. Because we have it's an important part of the process, and KIPTA is thankful that KYC asked MPOs and ads for the cooperation on this, because it's meaningful and again get balancing the local government input to the shift process to the regional state government staff input, which we have some, but then most importantly, getting the legislative input, which is critical as well. Those are things that all need to be balanced in this process, and hopefully we're doing a good job of that. And Tom, thank you very much for saying that, sir.
Thank you. There's no other business. I'll take a motion from anyone in person or online for adjournment.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.